G'day everyone, Prep Aussie here. I hope you're all well in whatever part of the world you're watching this video. Today is Friday. Yes, it is indeed Friday. I was wrong yesterday. The 10th of August 2018, and the time here is 09:30 Australian Eastern Standard Time. Folks, yesterday I showed you something about Alexander Downer, which is, for our country here in Australia, extremely worrying. And the reason it's worrying is because it's basically coming to light that he lied. And now, if he didn't lie, then there's somebody lied. So who was it? The FBI, the Australian government, or the Australian intelligence agencies, or the American intelligence agencies? If you remember, this whole thing, why I'm doing this is for a lot of reasons. The main reason is so that our kids don't grow up in this, what can only be described as a just ludicrous, nefarious shitbag world where everybody isn't allowed to say anything except basically 1984, what's written in the script. Well, quite frankly, screw that. I'm not going to do that. I've never done that anyway. If you're offended by my views, I'm sorry, but you need to grow up. I'm 54 years old. I'll say what I want. I've been given that God-given right to express my views, to say my views, and I bloody will say my views. But there was something that happened yesterday here in Australia, which all of us, and look, I don't agree necessarily too much with the way this person does things. I understand certain aspects of it, and I believe that they have refined their views a little bit. It doesn't mean that they're all good people or anything like that. But the term far right is becoming too well labelled as well. Everybody is, if you don't stick to the 1984 script, then you're labelled far right. And that includes people like myself, even though, you know, as I said, my only real pick out of all the things they do is try to stem free speech. And I'm just not going to have it. And as I said, I don't want my kids to grow up in this shithole environment that that they have created for all of us. And as I've said before, you don't say anything now, or like that, the famous saying, they came from, you know, my friends, I said nothing. They came from my neighbours, I said nothing. They came from my relations, I said nothing. And finally they came for me, and there was no one left for me to say anything to. Well, I'm telling you guys now, if you don't stand up now and be counted, share this with everyone, then we are all going down the shit chute real quick. Because what's the one thing here in Australia that we've always been able to pride ourselves on? Well, there's a couple of things: cricket, footy, but I'm talking actual real stuff here. And that's the every Australian's ability to disseminate bullshit and to actually call bullshit out when we see it. And the reason for that is because we're very outspoken people. We've got our own, you know, we've never been corralled into that, oh, you have to hate all Muslims, or you have to hate all black people, or you have to hate this, and you have, you know, as much as people say shit like that, you know, a good majority of Australians, a lot, more than the minority, actually have their own brain and can think for themselves in regard to issues like this. So, yesterday, and this is really important because this is happening more and more, but this is now really serious. Yesterday, a government minister, on her own volition, rang up Sky News, or rang up the train companies in Victoria, and told them under no circumstances were they allowed to put Sky News on the TV screens at train stations anymore. The reason for this as you're going to see in a minute, is because they said, or they had an interview with Blair Cottrell from the Australian United Party, I think it is. So I'm going to show you that now. But as I said, this is scary shit. This is a government elected person, a people's elected person, who's now taken it upon herself to do this. So let's go to the... Okay, folks. Sky News removed from Melbourne train stations after Blair Cottrell interview. Now, this person here, Jacinta Allen, hatred has no place on public screens. That's probably true. And I'd probably agree with that, except for one thing. You have the option of free speech here in this country. Now, you might like it, she might not like it, a minority might not like it, but the truth of the matter is that people have the right to free speech. Now, I'm going to read this, and you're going to get pissed off when you read it, when you hear it. Victoria's Public Transport Minister has directed metro trains to stop playing Sky News on television screens. Now, just a point to remember here. Before I go on, hang on a second. Sky News is Fox News. They're owned by, guess who? Rupert Murdoch. Fox News in America is absolutely kicking the shit out of this Pfizer memo thing at the moment and bringing it all to light. And if you watch Sean Hannity's interview yesterday, or Hannity report, he has finally blown it wide open for all to see. Australia banned Sky News the very next day, which is Rupert Murdoch's. Alex Jones gets deleted. A heap of other, what they call far-right people, got deleted from all platforms this week. So this is all happening this week while we're sitting here, while I'm doing this. I don't even know if you guys are going to get this, but I'm going to keep doing it. So do you see the correlation? Minister Jacinta Allen announced the change on social media this morning, which is ironic. I've directed Metro Trains to remove Sky News Australia from all CBD station screens, she said on Twitter. Hatred and racism have no place on our screens or in our community. Sky News Australia has admitted it was wrong to air the interview with Mr Cottrell after a heavy backlash from viewers. The former United Patriots Front leader was invited onto the Alan Gillies show for a studio interview about winding back immigration and protecting countries against foreign ideologies. Well, I got no problem with that. I don't know about anybody else. I'd actually probably be interested to hear what he's got to say. Although, and I will say this, I'm not 100% big fan of his. Within hours of the interview going to air and being shared on various Sky News social media platforms, the channel removed the interview from its repeat time slots and online platforms. Speaking to 3RW, Miss Allen said she had concerns about the broadcaster for some time, and the interview with Mr Cottrell was the final straw. Well, isn't that a piece of news? Speaking to 3RW, Miss Allen said she had concerns about the broadcaster for some time. What, because they're not the ABC lefty, let's just all talk about gay rights and, tree hugging and any other useless shit you want to talk about with our billions of taxpayers' dollars. So she's had this woman, if Sky News ever goes to court, they've just got to say that, and that will show she can't show bias as a government minister. That's one of their remits as a government minister. You're not supposed to show any bias to any section of the community, which is a joke in itself, really, because all they do is show bias anyway. So the interview was unacceptable. Indeed, Sky News themselves had admitted they got it wrong, she said. Oh, really? I think I've got a responsibility as a public transport minister to ensure that passengers aren't bombarded with what's really shocking content and message. Well, I hardly think it's really shocking content and messages. Sky News displayed on large screens on several train platform stations, including through the City Loop. When contacted for comment, Sky News said it had addressed the issues on air in a statement from political reporter Laura Jays. Miss Jay said the interview with Mr Cottrell had never aired on train station screens. Sky News is the only network that has banned him from appearing on this channel ever again, she said. You don't hear that from the ABC or any other commercial networks who have welcomed him on their news programs many times, she said. Now, let me read that again. Miss Jays, that's the Sky News reporter, said that the interview with Mr Cottrell had never aired on train station screens. Sky News is the only network that has banned him from appearing on this channel ever again, she said. You don't hear that from the ABC or any other commercial networks who have welcomed him on their news programs many times, she said. Miss Allen denied the decision to remove the network from screens was censorship. Well, I'm sorry, but it is. If people choose to access their content at home, travelling in their private time when they can absolutely do that, she said. But as the public transport minister, when it's its public asset that is being used to promote or televise particular content, I think I've got a responsibility to make sure that that content's appropriate. She said the government was talking to the Metro Trains about what content would replace Sky News. Opposition leader Matthew Guy said the decision was up to Jacinta Allen, but he thought it was an overreaction. And I'm going to agree with that. She's got a fucking great big fucking brown soapbox that she's standing currently on, and she's going to make the point heard and fuck you all, basically. She's basically saying that to everybody. Now, if you read that article again on your own, you'll see that it's actually two very different takes on what actually happened there. But regardless of whatever anyone says, it's actually censorship. Now, what would happen if it was ABC? And he has been on the ABC before, Blair Cottrell, many times. In actual fact, he's been interviewed many times on many TV stations, terrestrial TV stations here in Australia. So does that mean they ban, This is how serious it's getting, folks. 1984. They are going to take away your free speech. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm not prepared to bend over and grab my ankles so that I can be right royally screwed by certain individuals who think they are holier than thou. I know I'm not holier than thou. And as I said, she's got a bloody great big soapbox and she's standing on it at the moment going, oh, look at me, I'm so great. Yeah, well, in all honesty, love, you're an absolute friggin' idiot. And you've actually created a shitstorm, which is going to get worse, by the way, because people are now, every time they do something like this, there's another 100 people that wake up and go, what? And isn't it ironic? Isn't this ironic? They'll ban someone like Blair Cottrell from our TV screens, but they'll show live coverage of the US military or, whoever military it was, strafe bombing Iraq and killing thousands of innocent people. But that's okay. If anybody knows this woman, send her this video. Love, your hypocrisy is fucking disgusting. It is. It's abhorrent. Your hypocrisy is abhorrent. It's okay to watch strafe bombing Afghanistan, Iraq, Somalia. None of those people ever did anything to me here in Australia. But we literally went over there and bombed the shit out of them just because we thought we could do it. But that's okay. Put that on TV. If you live in this dimwit's area, you have the right to actually contact her and tell her that she was a dead set dill. And that's what you should be doing. Writing her a letter, email, bombard her with phone calls if you have to, but tell her that to get off a friggin' soapbox and stop trying to dictate people's life, because she's an elected person from the people. That's us. One last thing, folks. Okay. Finally, some common sense in this freaking country. Yesterday, or today in the ABC, Australia's foreign aid budget called into question when farmers face droughts. Now, it's interesting to note when you read this that the people they say brought this about, this change in attitude, was people like myself getting on the social media. Social media has been flooded with memes and posts calling for the federal government to cut foreign aid spending and use that money to help struggling farmers instead. But is that really a good idea? With emotions running high as drought grips large parts of the country. No, we've got no friggin' food and we're going to all starve to death. That's what this is about. The government is worried about misinformation and fake news about the aid budget is spreading online. Well, I'm one of those people, by the way. But it's not just keyboard warriors who are angry. Geez, that term pisses me off. But it's not just, and I'm going to change this, Australians who are angry. Australian taxpayers, that's better. Australian taxpayers who are angry. You know, and let's read this here from Pauline Hanson. This says it all. Oh, sorry, I'll read this bit. Agricultural Minister David Littleproud was urging people to approach what they read on social media with caution. We need to look at the facts, Mr. Littleproud said. Yeah, and the facts are they've had 10 years of no rain. They've had 10 years of massive suicides. They've had 10 years of cattle and everything else dying. They've had 10 years of no help. They've had 10 years of banks ripping them off. And they've had 10 years with people like Agriculture Minister David Littleproud just fucking ignoring them. That's the facts. Pull your finger out of your ass, David Littleproud, and actually stop sending our taxpayers' dollars to shithole little universes that we don't give a shit about. Your current rate is $6 billion a year that you're sending to these miserable little crap holes. Send the money to our Australian citizens first, whether it be veterans, unhoused veterans, farmers, anybody. Just don't send it to everybody else when we need it. That's the actual answer here. There's no discussion about it, you moron. I'd love to get on a talk show with this bloke and just say to him, what is going through your frigging brains in the government? Why aren't you helping Australians first and saying, well, sorry everyone else, you'll have to wait second until we've actually fixed up all our problems here at home first, and we've housed the veterans, we've got people off the streets, we've fed our farmers. You know what? This sums it up here. I'll read Pauline Hanson's thing. Here it is here. How can we justify shamefully wasting billions, and that's dead set right, on overseas handouts to corrupt governments and unaccountable NGOs while our farmers struggle with extreme droughts and suicide? Share if you think we should start redirecting foreign aid to Aussie farmers. Well, Pauline, you got my vote, love. Seriously. And you're dead right. And that's why we asked you to go into the government for us, so that you could actually start doing shit like this. If anyone knows Pauline Hanson, or, you know, secondhand or whatever, I would love to get her on my channel and just ask her about stuff like this. Because we need to stop this monumental stuff up that is the Australian government. And it's getting worse by the day. Now they're censoring us as well. Anyway, I'm getting on a soapbox. Hang on. Here you go, folks. Verse of the day. Are not 5 sparrows sold for 2 pennies? Yet not one of them is forgotten by God. Indeed, the very hairs on your head are all numbered. Don't be afraid. You are worth more than many sparrows. Whoa, that's a good one. I'll read that again. Are not 5 sparrows sold for 2 pennies? Yet not one of them is forgotten by God. Indeed, the very hairs on your head are all numbered. Don't be afraid. You are worth more than many sparrows. Very, very good. And as usual, folks, here's the Lord's Prayer. Let's say this prayer today for a couple of things. 1, common sense. 2, the right to free speech. And 3, for all the farmers out there. And if you've ever lived in a drought-affected area, which I have when I grew up, as I said the other day, it ain't pretty, folks. There was a couple of people lost their dads when I was younger, and it just destroys communities, not just families. Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, in earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever and ever. Amen. Right, folks, I've dribbled on long enough. It's actually got me pretty angry today. Anyway, let's think of the farmers and see how we can help. And let's see if we can get Pauline Hanson on this channel so I can interview her. Cheers, guys. God bless.